Good afternoon, everybody. We're about to start our next keynote speech, which will be led by Victor Pineda. He is a global expert on disability policy, planning and design, and Victor is president and CEO of Pineda Foundation World Enabled. He's also a two-time presidential appointee. Now, he also directs the Inclusive Cities Lab in the Department of City and Regional Planning at the University of California at Berkeley. He'll be speaking on My Journey Through Struggle, Innovation, and Radical Inclusion. Please welcome Victor Pineda to the stage. Thank you.
Hello, Barcelona. How are you doing today? It's the last day of the conference, and I'm not here to bore you. I'm here to excite you about something that I've dedicated my life to. Let's back up just a little bit. Let's see all these beautiful people. That's good. Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm on David. I'm actually streaming this whole thing live on my phone, so could you take my phone downstairs? All right, good. Let's go. So, guys, I am thrilled to be with you today as your speaker, inspirational speaker. I'm going to talk a little bit about what it is that we are here to do. What are we here to do and why? I changed the title of my speech a little bit because it's not just a story about radical inclusion. It's not a story about just changing these paradigms. It's a story about the capacity that cities have, the connective tissues that are being deployed through technology, but it's really about how each one of us thinks about inclusion. It's about unlocking the power of the way we think about the work that we do that gives us that competitive edge. Today, it's a story that relates my personal journey with the work that you're each doing today, and I hope will make you realize that we're all in this journey together. Radical inclusion for me starts with my family. I was born in Venezuela, and as a child I had difficulty walking because my muscles were weak. My mother took me to school, and in every school she took me to, they said, "I'm sorry, your child cannot go to the school. It's better you keep him at home so he does not get teased or bullied. It's better that you understand that this child will never be able to contribute to society." And the word invalido in Spanish actually means no value. So as a child, I was confronted with the fact that I would have no value to share with society. But that wasn't the narrative or the story that my mother wanted to follow. She went to the United States and sought new opportunities. The three guys in this picture are my three brothers. They would fight with me, they would play with me, and we would even get into a lot of trouble, which would make my mother very crazy. But we would do that in a way where I never really felt special. I never felt like I was different. I felt like I belonged, in every single school, in every single playground, on every single bus, because I was a kid that had the same joys and the same dreams as every other kid. This picture was taken when we just arrived to the United States in 1985 in front of Roy O. Anderson Elementary School. And the first day of classes, Miss Deering says to the kids, "Okay, kids, Victor's going to need a little bit of extra help getting to the cafeteria. So whoever volunteers to push Victor to the cafeteria will get an extra 10 minutes of playtime, recess." And all the kids raised their hand, and they wanted to be my friend so that they could get the extra playtime. Now, this idea of inclusion, although it did not cost the school any more money, it was just a way to make me feel like I belonged. But it was a huge transformation in terms of where I was coming from, a country of Venezuela that had no laws or protections. It was completely okay to deny me my human right to an education. That was not the case in the United States that had developed these laws and these opportunities that I took full advantage of. I ended up going from this school to become a valedictorian in my high school, I went to the University of California at Berkeley. I got a degree in political economy, business, a master's in regional economic development, and then a PhD in urban planning. And now I teach at some of the world's most prestigious universities. Not bad for a kid that wasn't going to learn much. That journey is not just a journey about rights and access. It's a journey that talks about the human potential, but really the imagination. Those teachers at that schools in Venezuela, those principals that thought that it would be too difficult or expensive to include me, they were looking at just the surface of what the challenges were. They weren't looking at the possibilities. They weren't using the power of their imagination, of what I could be, what I could become, and what I could contribute to the world. The image behind me happened a long time after that photo at Roy Anderson Elementary School. This journey represents my spirit of adventure and my dedication to human rights. I was one of the youngest people to negotiate the United Nations Treaty on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities that virtually every one of your countries has already signed and ratified, meaning that there is a legal obligation to ensure that cities, countries, companies provide full and equal access and do not discriminate against this other child, a young girl that might be wanting to go apply for her first internship, or a young man that might be deaf and wants to have access to your web content, your video web content, right? So this whole range of rights is enshrined in this treaty. And this picture shows a sense of adventure where I'm going to the most far out cities and remote locations trying to promote the human rights and to promote inclusion. I was very successful in my efforts as an advisor to national governments and to local governments. But I've started thinking a lot about, what it means to ensure human rights within the work that we each do. Human rights isn't just an abstract concept. It's actually a whole set of changes that we make to ensure that people have dignity. But what does it mean to be human was the other question underlining all my work. I was experiencing a lot of challenges in my life. I was getting successful career as a professor, as an academic, as a consultant, but I started to ask myself, was all this work really fulfilling? I was in a beautiful relationship and a marriage that after a time also seemed like I was questioning so many things in my life in terms of what I wanted to do with the time that I had on this planet. And so I went to my trusted friend, Google, and I asked, what does it mean to be human? What is that human capacity that we each have? And it's not just about relating to being the same species, but it's about being susceptible to weakness, being able to understand that we each have vulnerabilities, we each have constraints, we each have challenges. And it's really those challenges and those weaknesses that connect us as human beings. So being able to be human, being able to feel something is really where we need to understand that there is a fundamental value in connections. So I sought out some new adventures as well. And with my cousin Simon, I went to this crazy arts festival that you might know called Burning Man. Do you guys know Burning Man? Raise your hand if you know Burning Man. Okay, you guys know Burning Man. I had never been camping before, but this was the most extreme camping trip ever. And incredibly hot temperatures in the day, incredibly cold temperatures at night. And I go on to this adventure, this journey into the desert to really find out what does it mean to reawaken my imagination? What does it mean to be inspired? What does it mean to have authentic connections? And that's where one of these first ideas of radical inclusion came to be. This whole idea that we can be interdependent without having all of these material luxuries, where we can care for each other, where we can have fun doing so, was really what inspired me to continue to ask some questions about my life and where I wanted to take my life. And so I go on this spiritual journey out to India, to Varanasi, the sacred city of the dead, because I'm still asking these questions. What does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be fully alive, to reach your highest potential? And how does it mean to transform your vulnerabilities into strengths? These are the kind of questions that I started asking myself. And I go to this journey to India, and I'm actually invite a couple friends with me and a film crew, and we decided to make this documentary about this journey. The documentary is called 12 Bends, and it'll be out later this year. But the documentary really is about asking myself, what is it that I want to do with my life, with my talents, with my gifts? How can I be responsible in shaping and having an impact while at the same time having fun in what I'm doing and sustaining the organizations and the work that I want to do? The journey to India made me realize that we each have a unique talent, we each have a unique contribution to make. And whether it's our organizations, whether it's in our families, whether it's in our cities, we each can do more. Smart cities, I realized, are key allies in creating regenerative, responsive, and radical transformations in the way our cities function. As an urban planner, it's very easy for me to share with you the fact that cities are these systems of systems that too often are not tied together effectively. But each one of us has an opportunity to change that, a responsibility to change that. There's a $10 trillion infrastructure gap in the world today, and that infrastructure gap means that we're going to be doubling the footprint of the built environment in the next 30 years. Everything we have built as humans, everything we've built, the schools, the hospitals, the roads, will be doubled on Earth over the next 20 years. We've mentioned from other speakers, I mentioned China needs to build a city of 1 million people every week to keep up with demand. Now that infrastructure gap is a huge investment opportunity, but there's a large number of people, nearly 1 billion, that have been left out of that story. 1 out of 7 people have historically been left out of what these smart cities are and what they could be. And those are the community of people with disabilities. The $8 trillion, $9 trillion actually, $8.5 trillion, is the amount of disposable income that people with disabilities and older persons have. That's a tremendous market that can be part of this story. It's a story of inclusion. It's a story of diversity. It's a story about lifestyles. It's not about having a medical diagnosis that makes it difficult for me to walk. It's about a lifestyle that I have where I want to be active and I want to get on stage without climbing steps, and I want to get on an autonomous vehicle that I don't have to get out of my wheelchair on, or maybe enjoy my Internet of Things device that I'm able to talk to, or that I'm able to type to, or that I'm able to use my cell phone in a way that adjusts to my preferences, whether or not I have difficulty seeing, hearing, remembering, moving around without assistance. It's about this human continuum of experiences that can be permanent, like my own, or temporary. And these design interventions with inclusive design is in the power of each one of you to make a reality. Now, all these icons here show the diverse ways in which accessibility is really not just a human rights, it's a human imperative. And building this in means that 1 out of 5 people, right, that could leverage your tools can transform their lives. 1 out of 5 people that can use your tools can completely transform their lives, their earning potential, their educational outcomes, their participation outcomes. And it's really about the fact that all of us at some point in our lives will need assistance. And needing assistance is not bad. We all need assistance. I need assistance to get up on stage today. But each one of you also needs assistance. How can we make sure that that's built in to the products and services that we build? Now, inclusion really addresses your customers, but you have to be innovative in the way you promote inclusion. It's about having talent attraction and retention. It's about also understanding compliance. President Barack Obama appointed me to the U.S. Federal Access Board, where we passed regulations that have been harmonized with the European Union on digital accessibility. That means if you want to enter the US or European markets with your product, you better make sure they're accessible, or else you could be sued. But this isn't just an issue of compliance, because nobody wants to lead with a stick. I think we should be leading with a carrot, where we see companies like Microsoft and IBM and Google setting up chief accessibility officers, not just to tap the $8 trillion market of people with disabilities and older persons, but because they want to build innovative products that disrupt the way things are done. And these products create a huge opportunity to build in the next layer of infrastructure for machine learning, for cloud computing, and for everything else that's coming down the pipeline. Independence is also very important, which leads to the fact that we each want to have choices and the capacity to make the choices and to build our skill sets. I'm super honored and proud that the city of Dubai had asked me in 2014 to build and to write the Dubai Disability Strategy for the city. One of the elements of that strategy was to ensure digital accessibility and digital inclusion. And I'm so happy that Dr. Aisha bin Bishr from Smart Dubai took on that mandate with full excitement and ensured that every government website in Dubai was compliant with the global standards on digital accessibility, which is the WCAG AAA rating, AA rating. And that means that when they build out this Smart City Academy that provides technical and certification programs for people building smart cities, that people with disabilities, people that have visual disabilities and other disabilities can access that content. Why? Because the websites were built with the accessible architecture. Because they approved and adopted policy approaches that ensured that they wouldn't be leaving people behind. Microsoft, for example, launched the AI for Accessibility campaign that's really providing $25 million in AI services and software to support accessibility. So there's a lot going on. We can do this together, to being carried, being connected, partnering through the difficult road ahead, the bumpy road, but knowing that we can do it together. I'm super excited to also announce today that we'll be joining MasterCard City Possible initiative to really help all the cities in the MasterCard City Possible project become accessible and inclusive, and we can help with the digital toolkit from Smart Cities for All to do that. So the partnerships really is about commitments. It's about understanding that your core identity is to be responsive to the needs of not just a typical customer, a very large range of atypical customers, and the tools and the design interventions that you make create the revolutionary approaches that unlock our human potential. Your core identity and your commitment means that your tools need to be easy to use and they have to be accessible. It's not just about sustainable cities, but responsive cities. It's not just about regenerative cities, but inclusive cities. And it's really about the talent that you each have and the supports that you each have to make sure you're not leaving anyone behind. Working on the Sustainable Development Goals and the New Urban Agenda with my friend Elkin Velasquez from UN Habitat means that there already is several international agreements specifically focused towards making sure that we do not leave people out. You know, this is a path. Inclusion is not just a destination, it's a journey. And each one of us need to make a commitment to lead on that journey. Because as the world faces incredible obstacles, and as cities are trying to keep up with these dramatic shifts, whether it's the aging demographics shift, whether it's the massive inflow and pressures on public sector services, whether it's the kind of innovations that are being developed by the private sector. This is a journey that we have to go on together. That's why initiatives like this one here at the Fiera Barcelona, the Smart City World Congress, the Congress that is happening in different places like in Puebla, the Latin American Congress, give us a chance to really take note of the values that we have and how those values that direct how we use technology. Not how technology directs how we live our lives, but how we understand the values that we have that can be brought to light with the technology that we use. So I want to invite you on this journey with me. I want you to join our initiative on December 3rd with the mayors of Berlin, Rabat, and a lot of other cities. We're launching the global campaign and the global compact on accessible and inclusive cities. The global compact is going to show you exactly how your city can be inclusive, how your city can support innovation, how your city can be accessible, and how you can join with other partners in ensuring that you know how to do that effectively, whether it's on your digital infrastructure or your physical infrastructure. Reach out to me, tweet me at Victor Pineda, at World Enabled. I'm here to go on this journey with you. It's not a complicated journey. It just requires a commitment to ensure that if you want a race to the top, you need the talents of every single person. And if you want your city to attract the best people, you need to identify how to create a resilient, inclusive, and a participatory city where each one of us has talents, has dreams, and has potentials that can be realized. And we can do that together. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Did we want to have any questions?
Yes, of course.
I'm happy to respond to any questions. We've worked with cities all over the world, including Chicago, New York, Barcelona, London, Rio de Janeiro, Sao Paulo, Mexico.
So we have an opportunity for you to come up to one of the mics and ask a question. I also have a question here on the ask and vote system, so you can send in questions here as well. So
David. Where's David? Could you bring David up stage? Go ahead, question.
I'll ask you the question here.
Tied to the chest.
So our first question is, inclusion and accessibility is easier when there is surplus. Is it possible for the poorest countries to also be inclusive and accessible?
Definitely. We've seen so many examples of, because we started the conversation today with a lack of imagination. It's not about only resources. It's about using what you have and bringing people together. Oftentimes when I advise governments, mayors, CIOs, national governments, I give them a rapid assessment tool that helps them understand how to do inclusive approaches to urban development. So let's take an example. I have a friend here who is a speaker from Kampala, Uganda. Kampala has a unique approach where at every city council, there's one seat reserved for a person with a disability, right? And so there you have an inclusive approach to governance in the city planning efforts, right? So you can be a small town or small city in Uganda and have a participatory approach to how you use the resources that you have to identify and eliminate barriers.
Yeah.
Is there another question?
I'm happy to open the floor, and if anyone wants to ask a question, please do step up.
If there's no other question, I'll leave you with just four things that you can do when you go back to your organizations and your cities. Number one, understand that there's a legislative requirement for everything that you're doing on accessibility. There are laws that require this work to happen. Understand what those laws are and how to comply by them. Number two, understand that there's leadership. Every city has a leader whether it's a mayor or deputy mayor, are these issues of inclusion being addressed within your own company? Your CEO, are they addressing these issues? Number 3 is institutional capacity. Do you have the administrative and coordinating capacity to ensure inclusion isn't just in social corporate responsibility, but it's across the entire organization, a horizontal approach to inclusion? Number 4, are people with disabilities, older persons, participating in the decisions, in the product testing and the product design of these smart city solutions? And ultimately is, what are the attitudes and beliefs? How do we change the narrative? It's not about a kid that can't go to school because he can't walk and he's going to be bullied, so he's better not to have any human potential. It's about, how do we ensure that the next Stephen Hawking's that might be living in your city that can't get to school or can't use a computer or your website or your app because you didn't make it accessible, cannot realize their human potential? It's, how do we create that new imagination and that new narrative around inclusion that understands that we each have something to contribute and we each have a responsibility to allow those contributions and those talents to come to life. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Give another round of applause
David,
to
let's
Mr.
go.
Pineda. Thank you so much.